Hello, this is a PowerPoint presentation for week number 2 of PPA557. My name is Shirley Valencia, and today I'll be talking about founding theories of public administration, an emphasis with 3 of them. So, the first theory I'll be talking about will be the Wilson's dichotomy. The second will be 14 principles of management, and the third will be the reciprocal relationships. So for Wilson's dichotomy, his essay came right after the 1883 Pendleton Act. So in 1887, he basically sets this idea of politics, administration, and the division between both of them. So his main focus was in the division of in the roles of the administration and the politics. So for the politics, the way I see it is that they're responsible for developing the policies, developing the tasks, doing the thinking, and these individuals for the most part are voted into office. Okay, on the side of the administration is more the field of the business. Our job, or all those employed by the government, we somehow or another, depending on our role, administer these services. So our job is to implement, execute the policies that the politicians developed. And part of the question in this slide was, do we agree or do we think that these theories work as they are, or if we feel that they should be changed? So there's a lot of us in this class, so I doubt that everybody will remember everybody and where everybody works. But in my experience, for example, I work for social services. So this, I can see exactly how this applies to a government agency. And the perfect example for me between these two is that the most recent, anyways, for me, is maybe the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. So politicians, got together, developed this policy, made it into law, and pretty much sent it to the states for execution, right? The states, in turn, had to adopt it, and each state kind of had their own way of how to execute it. For example, in California, there was a subsystem that was created just for this policy or for this act that the politicians passed. So most other states were in a different system. They didn't have the subsystem of, here in California it's called CalHERS. So the other states didn't have that. So just that alone, it, to me, in my opinion, shows that it's a problem, because when it gets to execution, not all agencies or all states or all agencies will execute the way we're supposed to, or the way that the politicians intended for all to execute. They write the process, they write the law, whatever they're passing, and when they're developing, I think in their heads they're thinking, yeah, it's gonna work. But once it gets to the states or to the whoever's supposed to implement the policy, it doesn't always work that way. So in my opinion, this dichotomy doesn't work all the time. I think the idea is there, but it doesn't specifically work as planned for the most part. Okay, the second one is the 14 principles of management. And like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm not going to go over the whole 14 principles, but this was developed by Henry Bayot, known as the father of general administration. So I really, again, I want to keep it focused on my experience as a public employee, I guess. I wanted to touch base on division of labor, authority, discipline, stability of tenure of personnel, initiative, and esprit de corps. So basically, I agree that this most with his principles. Division of work, it's a must. Everybody should have a role, and other like specialized units. Like you can see this a lot in maybe in a lot of the governmental agencies. There's the specific departments for specific processes. The authority, for example, it will be more an equivalent of a chain of command, and how that works within the governmental agencies. Like it's so different in the private sector. Discipline, the same. I still feel that we have a process of discipline, and that all employees should be disciplined in the same manner according to their faults or whatever they're going through. Like for example, like they mentioned, like if I'm late and I'm a manager, but then you're late and you're an employee, we should, I mean, regular line staff, we should all be disciplined in the same way. Okay, the next one the next principle will be equity. Equity, yes, we should all be treated equal, get paid equally for the same labor type that we do. Stability, of course, you know, the more stable your employees are, maybe the more happy, the more productive that we can get, and the more interest we have in our employees for them to, decrease turnover, have higher productivity, people that enjoy their place of work. The next one will be like, let our employees take the initiative. If we allow our staff or our employees to take the initiative in a lot of the processes that we put in place today, we will have so many more ideas, because this reminds me a little bit of the one we just talked about before, the dichotomy, where we have different roles, right? So a lot of times we develop these processes and ideas of how we should implement whatever, and then once you let your employees take the initiative, because they do the work every day, they have better ideas, which if you implement, the work will be so much easier. And finally, the spirit of the corps is teamwork. And by teamwork, I mean where everybody is working towards the same goal, right? And bringing certain or different skill sets at different levels. And I think this is very important for for administrators. Like if you can get that from your employees, you're gonna have a better organized processes than if you have everybody kind of like on their own, working on the same project separately without unity, and pretty much not working for the same goal or interest. The next one, and of course the last one, will be reciprocal relationships. This one is by Mary Follett. I think she brings the humanistic side of, or the first known humanistic side of the public administration theories. Interestingly, she's a social worker, or she was a social worker. So her whole idea was to get this idea of power, how to, where rather than overpower, than rather power sharing. I'm sorry. So she believed that if you kind of like work one on like side by side with your staff, even though you're a manager, and your staff, I guess a lot of people interpret managers having power and being in the higher chain of command and all that. But I guess her way of thinking was more like, if we work together towards the same goal, like I get to hear you out and develop, like adopt your ideas, and get you involved in decision making and all those things, staff or employees are more likely to work side by side with you, and in turn be more productive, right? So that was her whole things about these relationships. She believed in you know, I don't know, I guess because of her being a social worker, and maybe because um, my degree is in social work, I can see how this makes people feel accounted and valued as employees. So I think this theory works as long as people are allowed, of course, allowed to give feedback and decision making and be heard and counted. At the same time, however, you still have to follow the other principles that come with administering public services or public agencies, which is, you know, we're keeping like enforcing other principles that are as important as having these relationships, especially with the millennial generation. Okie dokie. Well, that's all. I think my slides were a little long, but I hope you enjoyed my presentation.